Yeah, that's me again. Everybody knows me by now, that's not the problem. We'll have a panel discussion here this afternoon.
Whoa.
And
we can't see anything. Ed, is this another round of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
And that discussion is with you, so we hope to interact with you as much as possible, to reflect our ideas and get your inputs and so on. So the panel members we have here are 3 Lemicans. I'll give them the chance to present themselves.
Okay,
quickly.
I'll go ahead first. My name is Rich Katz. I am the Chief Technology Officer at Alemica, and that means I'm in charge of product development and product management.
Mark van Hallingen, also a Lemican. I work in the BPS department, stands for Business Process Solutions. I listen to you, your customers, and I'll try to design and connect and align the solutions we have to your requirements.
My name is Alex Piras. I'm also in the Business Process Solutions team. And as Mark, my job is basically to, on the one hand, deliver a technical solution that fulfills your need, as well as look at the best way in delivering that solution to you.
Thanks, guys. So these are the Alemicans that participate on our panel today. I prepared some stuff, but really I would prefer not to get to it. So what about this? Getting lost in all this IoT stuff? So what we'll try to do is to create some order, some logic. And what we propose is to travel through time. And maybe start with, what could we do today? Do you have already some IoT applications today running? Actually, did you realize that Alemica is an IoT application? So you have the first one there, and what could be possibly the second one? Was that Mark who had some ideas on that? Mark, go ahead. So what could we do today?
What we see is that some of our customers with, for example, vendor-managed inventory have telemetry sensors in their tanks, so they can establish min-max levels. And for example, if a minimum level in a tank has reached, automatically an order is created. So to replenish it. So that is one example of a simple next step in IoT.
VMI exists already since some time. You have automated it also through Alemica?
Yes,
correct?
we can automate it via
How many clients use VMI?
I'll take it. So on the inbound and outbound side, we probably have about 25 customers using vendor-managed inventory. And some of them actually are getting inventory feeds from tank telemetry sensors that they've probably had in place for 10, 20 years. So in many ways, IoT, there's a little bit of a marketing angle there. So your 20-year-old tank sensor is IoT. Your cell phone, your mobile phone is IoT.
Is IoT, yeah, that's exactly right. But that's not a problem, I think. It's rather an opportunity, is my impression. Of course, we have many of these things around since ages. However, what happens is that everyone is aware and has a sense of urgency of applying it, and we know why we are doing it. We want to refuel, again, economic growth. So all the countries, the regions and the companies are now thinking about this very hard because we want to achieve something with it. And now these technologies become more useful.
Yep.
So another thing that is there any users of VMI in the room? Yes. Yeah. Is there any comments you want to make? Would you go would you like to make a next step? Would you like to improve it? Is there any other things that you think of? Any other processes you would like to automate this way?
Well, I can only say from our side, we've had quite good experience with VMI for bulk products. I don't think that's a real difficulty, but it's kind of hard to identify the right projects for packed products, because then the dear customers also need to do their part. Yes, and that's where it gets difficult.
Yes.
Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think the reason it's easier with bulk products is, in many cases, you do have a higher confidence in what that inventory is, because you have the inventory in bulk tanks, and through the IoT devices, the measuring devices, I think there's a higher confidence in what that inventory is. Now, when it comes to some of the packed goods, you have to have a lot of trust in your inventory systems, and we haven't gotten here yet. I know there was an initiative, 5-10 years ago, really trying to push RFID, and the promise was that RFID would really solve that inventory situation for things like packed goods. And I think the technology behind that is not quite there yet. So as an industry, we and broader, I think the whole technology industry really hasn't been able to get to that level of clarity and clear operations with RFID for capturing inventory relatively inexpensively. And I think that's why there's a challenge there.
We'll come back to the gentleman just in a second, but would label printing or barcode reading help there? I remember I've seen a brewery in Czech Republic, and they had some printers just before the warehouse. And I think they had a pretty accurate view on their warehouse.
Absolutely.
They did, of course, every year a test and a check, but
yeah, and that's another way of ensuring you have accurate inventory. So that's part of a good barcoding process is part of a good inventory control system.
So that could maybe help in a simple way. Okay, let me get back to the gentleman. Another question about VMI.
Well, it's not a question, it's a remark from our side. So we are using VMI in our company on the inbound side. The main challenge that we have is not so much the stock holding, it's more the forecast. Yes. The forecast accuracy that we have to send to the supplier in order to make him able to supply on time. And this is a big issue, and therefore we are using VMI, yes, wherever it's necessary, but it's not our focus, it's not our strategy to increase the VMI share.
Because the forecasting is so complicated to do?
Well, we had really fails in the past, so we have bad experience where we had to step back from VMI, so it might be that it was a wrong implementation. We have requirements from our factories to have a flexible production on our side, so it's natural that we are also changing plans, we are changing forecasts, we have customer requirements where we have to react flexibly on, and we see that VMI might not be the right tool in order to have that flexibility.
Okay, we heard that challenge.
Yep.
Maybe the implementation, the mode of implementation could be another angle to it. Any reactions from our panel?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that is a supply chain challenge in general about how you can forecast your demand more accurately. And it's a tough challenge. In the future, will IoT come into play? I think it may have a role. If there are ways to implement IoT to help sense demand flows in the future, that could help. But it's also a math problem, and that's probably a little bit, it's a supply chain math optimization problem that's probably beyond the scope of IoT.
I could imagine that we could use earlier signals maybe to do some short-term forecasting. So there would be possibilities, I think. Okay, so far so good for VMI. Any other comments? We move on to the next topic. Alex, you mentioned another relatively ready-to-use technology that is of interest to your clients.
Yeah, that would be transport management and transport status. So at the moment, we already do transport status, but at the moment it's more triggered by events during the execution of a transport, so arrival on location, departure from location. And the next step in that development would be to go to more a proactive approach, where we also track geographical locations and match that with traffic.
More continuous tracking so that
Yeah.
you can see the load coming. Any challenges of experiences that you would like to share? It's like Amazon when you order a book, right? It's a similar concept. I thought Alex had a good real life example where he said, now this is all fine, but when something happens, if I have a slot reserved to unload, and this truckload or barge load doesn't exactly arrive where I expected it for whatever reason, I can act on this information if I have the status.
That's correct. So this was a question posited by one of our clients who basically said, I have got the LMK transport slot optimization solution in place, but what it doesn't prevent is from a slot in the end not being utilized because the truck is stuck in traffic. So it doesn't make it on time. And it would be beneficial for me to then, as an operator of that site, to be able to say, I know the truck is not going to come, but I already have got a truck here, and then being able to switch it around dynamically.
Right, so being able to react to smooth the supply chain variability. It's the variability that creates a lot of issues, correct? So the more information we have, the more we can react proactively, and the more we can smooth these effects. Does that match your needs? Is that something that makes sense? Is that useful? Not really convincing for now. Some people in your company may be interested in it anyway. And you know, thinking together about this subject, this whole variability. You know, if you have these downtime slots where you cannot unload or when you cannot produce, that's really lost revenue, correct? So that's what you would like to get rid of. And the supply chain variability, the truck that is in traffic, is not the only source of variability. We have also, in manufacturing, variability. You know, have a pump that stops working, or you know, whatever. There can be equipment breaking, and so the production may stop where you didn't expect it. Even if we have all these IoT reliability solutions now more and more on stream, and we're getting better and better at it, still, you know, something may happen. So we can connect that as well. Yep. Not only the supply chain, we can also connect the information from the manufacturing lines. And you know, how
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that actually would then tie in to be able to have a correct forecast as well.
Exactly. So that gives you a much more accurate forecast, much more opportunity to react. So again, there should be quite some benefits there. Speaking about benefits, I don't want to leave you with this cable mess. That's really tough. Here I summarized, you know, from all these initiatives that we saw this morning, the different levers that they act on. It's a little bit small, I apologize for that, but basically we're looking at economics, and there are two parts to it. One part is creating more value, for example, selling more product or be able to produce more. And the other part is creating cost competitiveness, that is reducing your cost and creating efficiency. Very simple. And the second category is sustainability. We have energy and material sustainability. We have social sustainability, the quality of jobs and the quality of life, well-being at work. And then we have economic sustainability, stable value chain ecosystems, know-how preservation, knowledge preservation. So those, you know, if we're thinking ahead into the future of new solutions, those are the categories that we need to think of. And in general, by default, we tend to think of cost competitiveness. That's the way we have been educated the last 20, 30 years. It's always about cost cutting. No, there is more than that. We can also create additional value. And usually that's more profitable, we have seen. Mm-hmm. So let's try and make the next step. Rich, what would...
You know, Valentijn, one of the things you had mentioned, I think in the earlier presentation or in a different presentation you sent me, was modular manufacturing and modular assembly lines. And just curious if we're seeing any of that in the process industries. Are you seeing it? Is our audience seeing it? Because that will have, I think, a profound effect on the supply chain.
We expect so too. So I'll give my perception and then we'll ask the chemical companies to comment. So we see a divide where this is really going to take on. It is where products are changing quickly. Specialty chemicals, fine chemicals, life sciences products, where you have fast turnover of product cycles. You change all the time, where you have to adapt your manufacturing very regularly, and where the demand is also very fluctuating. For the very big processes, the very big plants, ethylene producers or refining processes, we don't see this taking on. So we think there is really a divide between the big processes and the small product-oriented processes. That's what we think. And that I've been discussing with Bayer and BASF, and I get good feedback on that. But is there any other thoughts or reactions to this? Which companies are actively, yes, I see one in the back, actively thinking about this?
I know when I was in Air Products that the modular creation of air separation units, where historically you would build on site next to a plant. About 20 years ago, they started producing VSAs which could do oxygen and PSAs which could do nitrogen. So you could have sort of gaseous nitrogen on site. So again, the chemical companies, rather than us trucking 25 tons of liquid nitrogen to your site, you'd be producing it there and then. So I can see if the modular creation will start getting to the stage where other chemicals can be built on site. Now, the advantage of air separation is that your raw material is the air. But is there any reason why titanium dioxide couldn't be done in a modular way so that paint companies are not having to ship that from plants and things like that? So I think that's going to be the thinking of, can we move to an on-site methodology for chemicals rather than other elements?
Wonderful, thank you. Other potential products would be dangerous products to transport. Chlorine is a good example. On-site biomass incineration for energy generation is something that is coming up, also happens in modules. Mm-hmm. Any other things that you came across?
Rich,
any thoughts to that?
From my perspective, no.
So that's where we have been asked by the industry to do a study and to investigate with up to 50 companies, 50 chemical companies, and investigate what that market is and how fast it would grow and exactly in which sector. So that may be something that we can talk about more maybe next year. More quantitative assessment of how fast this is going to take on, hopefully.
Yep.
So now we're thinking 5 years ahead, I think. Rich, what would you expect in terms of software, decision support?
Sure. So I think the Internet of Things and smart manufacturing in general is going to do a number of things. So certainly it's going to require a flexible supply chain. So tying it back to Alemica and the business network, that means being able to connect to partners relatively quickly. And as Arun showed you, he'll come over and he'll set up a connection in 5 minutes for you, so not an issue there. It's also going to produce a lot of data, and that means you have to have the systems in place, generally NoSQL type storage systems, to be able to absorb that data,
yes,
categorize that data. These are going to be sort of the fundamental requirements that you're going to need to take advantage of and to implement a supply chain in the future based on the changes from smart manufacturing and the IoT in general. And in terms of, how does that play into Alemica and our particular roadmap 5 years from now? Certainly things like risk management. We see the ability to take a look at what's happening in your supply chain, whether it's from transactional data coming out of your ERP systems, data feeds coming from your assets that are describing where material is flowing, and combining that with sort of the social listening that's out there today. And one of the earlier presenters had talked about a lot of big data coming out there. And that data can certainly be applied to your particular supply chain. And if you can combine that generalized big data with specific transactional data, you can really use that to analyze, if you have the right algorithms, predict risk, even possibly sense demand in a more accurate way. And from a Lemmica's roadmap perspective, 2016, second half of 2016 is about starting to implement and bring to market risk management solutions that will look at transactional data as well as third-party social listening feeds.
That sounds very exciting and also extremely useful, I suppose. What is the public's opinion about this? You can't wait to start using risk management.
Well, I think the risk management would have two categories. One is the prediction, so how risky is your supplier, how risky is your customer.
Yes.
But the other part, I would just like to give you an example. I think some weeks ago we had the Tianjin accident, Tianjin port in China.
Yes.
And immediately it was a big chaos in our company. So everybody wanted to know, how is our supply chain affected? Is our supply chain affected? Are we running out of materials because of that? Blah, blah, blah. So it was completely unstructured. So I fully agree to the points that we have to use better data where we can link the information that we have already in the Lemmica system. So we know about our purchase orders, we know where they are. So now we have to enrich this type of information with external data. So I fully agree to that statement.
Thank you very much.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's about really making semantic sense out of the unstructured data and then correlating it with the amount of tremendous volume of structural data that you have, structured data.
Yes, that's exactly what we observe as well. So the unstructured data, the text data, if it is Twitter or news items or you know whatever, gives the context that enables to make sense out of streams of numbers. There was a great simple example from a colleague of mine who looked at the scoring of one of his favorite soccer players, and at some point his scores went down. And when you look in the newspapers, you see that he has been caught for drunk driving. Does it start to make sense? Yes.
Yeah.
It starts making sense suddenly. So that's the kind of thinking, combining unstructured data with structured data.
That's a great example.
That's a very simple, illustrative example. I need to go back to Mark because he had a very bright idea. But while we are on the far future, is there anything else that the public would like to see addressed? Are there any projects going on that we may need to be aware of? Where are the priorities? Okay, predictions, optimization, network optimization, maybe common optimization together with our peers. Would that make sense? To some extent? We're doing already some binary stuff, but would we be able to do the optimization of a network on a certain horizon? That would be challenging. Mm-hmm. So that's stuff we're trying to think about for the further future, to even make us more reactive, more predictive. Okay, let me get back to Mark. He had a very bright idea just at lunch. What was that idea again?
Talking about the far future.
No, we thought about the Uberization.
Yeah, the Uberization.
Of transportation.
Yeah, in my view, it's all about the demand. You want to supply your customers with what they need, and it's volatile. And so what you eventually want is on-demand, getting access to capacity with carriers, etc., etc. So eventually, it could be that you might have the Uberization of your carriers. You just need it now, or you just need it in a couple of days. So you send out a request, and you can actually follow the truck on Google Maps to exactly know where it is. You can already do that if you go to a website. It's called flightradar24.com. You can actually see in real time where all the airplanes in the world are. So that is
Except Donald Trump's. He got off.
Yeah, okay.
Have you got your license, Mark?
Sorry?
Have you got your license?
For flying?
You can make some money in the weekends?
Maybe, but I can come up with a model. So that's what I foresee that a potential future scenario could look like.
Yes, there could be. This is one possibility. So many possibilities open up for us in the next 5 to 10 years. We have to grasp the opportunity. We probably should take some time to sit back and think about it, create some vision for ourselves. If we don't have a vision, we have a big chance missing it. You know that? So create your vision and try to pick the grapes, because there are a lot of stuff out there. So our time is up. Thank you so much for this discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen, to you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope to see you all soon.